Thanks for coming to my lecture. My name is Filip. I'm working in game audio since 2015. I'm a senior sound designer at Techland, and currently I'm working on Dying Light 2 Stay Human. Previously I worked on World War III and Get Even with the Farm 51. Today I want to show you an overview of Dying Light 2 audio systems. I will start with introducing the game, then I will show you a breakdown of our gameplay that we used for designing, and then I will give you 4 examples of systems, and we'll finish with a demonstration of our narrative structure system. For those that are not familiar with the game, Dying Light 2 is an open world action-adventure game set in zombie apocalypse. The story takes place 13 years after the events of Dying Light 1. Main character Aiden is cooperating with different factions of Villedor City, trying to find his long-lost sister. The key gameplay features of Dying Light 2 are, of course, combat, parkour, and probably you already know day-night cycle that is changing enemy behavior at night, making the zombies more difficult at night. DL2 has a huge open world and is designed with a lot of focus on player freedom. That's why we needed a lot of systemic solutions, not only in audio. For our middleware, we used Wise. I would like to say that this presentation is not meant to be a tutorial. I want to show you what we did, and it's up to you to decide if it was worth it or not. So let's begin. We start by planning out the. We start planning out the audio design by analyzing the gameplay and grouping different elements by type. So here we have main context, that would be main player focus at all times. This is dialogues, combat, parkour, and exploration. On the right, you can see player-related parameters. Those are float values that are changing continuously all the time in the game, which means they can be represented by RTPCs in Wise. So health and stamina, pretty obvious, and infection means the main character is infected and cannot stay outside the UV light for too long without risking death, basically. On the bottom we have, I hope you can see it, additional types of context that can be present simultaneously with the main context. And these elements we can translate into state groups in Wise. So daytime, because zombies are more difficult and the gameplay is completely changing at night. Chase can be triggered at night. Dark zones can be explored at night. Faction ownership means the player can assign areas of the city to different factions with open world activities. Rooftop and street is supposed to show a contrast between humans living on the rooftops and undead living on the street, and finally indoor-outdoor. So thanks to an overview like that, we can understand what are the needs and what needs to be supported most of the time while playing the game. And it is a great starting point for designing every particular system, as we know which parts are the most important. So let's start with the first example, which will be combat system. So we start the design by making a list of context that will be imported in a combat scenario. Health and infection are important because player is trying not to die. And and stamina and weapon durability is important because player is trying to kill. And both of those are scaling the level of damage that player can deal, right? So if we have low weapon durability, that means that we will not deal enough damage in combat. And lastly, types of enemies and enemy difficulty is for us important because we want to help the player prepare a strategy for the combat. And player actions are meant to be a rewarding mechanic, so we can reward what the player is doing in combat. Is the player stealthing, killing, or making a special move, and so on. And then we brainstorm how we can use this context in layers of sound design and music. So starting with the sound design, we decided to use health parameter to add low pass to selected buses and start an accelerating heartbeat. When the health gets to critical level, weapon durability will play completely different sounds of weapon hits and weapon swings. So all the weapon sounds will be changed. Infection is mainly indicated by biomarker beep, which is biomarker is a device that everyone in Villador City is using, and the device is monitoring the infection progress. We will also add a drone, so a little bit like music, you can call it music, that will get louder as the infection gets lower, and we will change player breathing assets to make him sound like he's ill, basically. Similar situation is for the stamina parameter. We also used it to switch player breathing to exhausted recordings, and this proved to be a little difficult for us because we had to create breathing and scream recordings that would sound exhausted and infected at the same time. We ended up using over 1,200 assets for player breathing and player screams. For music, we have type of enemy and enemy difficulty. Those will change the music tracks that are played. So we had infected, survivors, peacekeepers, bandits, and renegades, 5 types of enemies. And we had 2 types of difficulty, small and big. So we had in total 10 combinations. We ended up with a little less music tracks than this, I think around 7. And then player actions will be used for music structure variations. For that, we created a state group that is called Stealth Fight. This state group is a list of different things that can happen during combat, and basically each state is triggered when an event happens, if it's a stealth takedown or a special move or a kill. We use this to change phrases of music, but also it proved to be useful for sound design, as you will see in video example just a minute. And finally, stamina is adding low pass to the combat music. So thanks to assigning function to each layer of audio, I believe we can make the audio more valuable to the player, as it is either rewarding or informing player about something. Now I want to show you a video example. There will be subtitles. I'm sorry I put the subtitles on the bottom. Won't happen again. Forgive me. The subtitles in triple brackets are representing a sound you're supposed to listen to, and the plain text will be description of the context, so the reason why the sound is playing. The video will demonstrate the stealth fight state, weapon durability, infection, health, and enemy difficulty. There will be a lot going on, so I know it's late, but please focus.
Could you?
You like me now, asshole? Motherfucker!
Okay, so let's go to the next system, which will be parkour. We repeat the exact same process when designing the system for parkour. We make a list of important context, stamina, infection. Dark zone means the player can enter dark zones accidentally or on purpose when parkouring, and we want to inform him that he can start the combat that should be careful in a dark zone. Parkour flow means that we give the player more XP if the parkour movements are fluent. So there will be rewards for combos, and we want to obviously support that with audio. Big jump is meant to reward the risk of jumping between tall buildings, and player velocity is needed to give the feeling of quick movement by the main character, fast movement. And again, we determine the function of the context. So for sound design, we use the stamina and infection exactly the same way as in combat. So switch the screams and breathing, the biomarker sound. With velocity, we will be driving the movement sounds, the player movement sounds, and the parkour progress will be used to play Aiden verbal expressions of joy, let's say. And for music, we use the parkour flow to progress the music track. This was done by RTPC. We called special move. Every time a player makes a parkour move, we will add a little value to the RTPC. And to make it balanced and satisfying, we ended up defining a different value for every one of 32 moves that are possible, because some of the moves are more spectacular than the other, and it would feel awkward if the music would go to the next stage by jumping in place 3 times or something like this. So that is the RTPC. The big jump will post-process the music. Player velocity will be driving the volume of music layers. So, for example, we can take away the bass drum when player is standing still during parkour. And dark zone will add low pass to the music. Worth noting that the music function was very empowering, so we completely disabled the parkour music at night. Now another video with example. There will be two examples. First one, parkour run during day. It will show the special move RTPC working, the velocity RTPC, big jump, and dark zone. And the second example will be infection progression during parkour.
Inhibitor container detected. Okay. So let's go back to the big overview. Those were examples of the systems for the main context, but what about all of that additive context that we have at the bottom? We still needed to cover this somehow. For this purpose, we created special smaller systems. Now I want to show you two examples of those. First one is wind. It is a layer of exterior ambience. We used additional layer called altitude that would be illustrating how tall is the building that player is standing on. And the main layer of wind would be a structure of switch containers organized like in this chart. So on top, we would switch between the world of exploration and hubs. In exploration, we switch by
day and night. Both day and night are switched by rooftop and street. And finally, the rooftops are switched by regions, and the streets will be switched by a secret state group that I will show you at the end of this presentation. This meant we had to prepare a lot of wind assets that would represent different moods or emotions, and quite frankly, it was a lot of fun preparing this many wind assets. This was very subtle but continuous layer that helped us change the atmosphere. Even if there is nothing going on, the player would receive some information about the game. So here's a quick example of some of those winds. Some random examples. Of course, the wind sounds were isolated. This is not retail gameplay. As you could hear, the street at night felt much more colder and oppressive than during day, and this is basically what we are trying to do with those sounds. Second system for the additional context would be also a layer of ambient, but this time joined with some exploration music. Those would be sounds that are representing a human activity in each zones. Also, it is a structure of switch containers. First, we illustrate what region the player is. On the region 2, the central loop, we used more, let's say, for example, power tools, and we changed the reverb to fit how the region looks. At night, on the street, we would completely disable the faction sounds because, as I said earlier, we want to show that the streets belong to the dead, and humans are owning the rooftops. Then we can use those sounds to inform the player what daytime it is. So at dusk, the humans will be seeking shelter. During day, it will be normal activity, and at night, we change those sounds to more zombie-related activity. And of course, finally, we have the factions, different factions. And then for peacekeepers and survivors, we have something that is called safety, which basically means how many zones the player gave to this faction. And we feedback the player decision. If the player gave a lot of zones to peacekeepers, then the peacekeeper activity will be more joyful, let's say, more secure, more laughing, less shouting. We ended up using 600 sounds and over 1,000 voice assets for this system. Now I will play again video from the game. First, it will show the unsafe state for survivors and peacekeepers. then sounds of people seeking shelter at dusk, then save state in difference between region 1 and 2, and quick example from night activity. So using this mindset, we created many systems, and they work great with supporting the generic context and every generic moment of the gameplay. But what about the story? We needed some sort of master system that would make it possible to disable the generic systems during important story moments and twists. Something we could also use to introduce custom changes in sound, music, and the mix throughout the storyline. This proved to be challenging, mostly due to Dying Light 2 open quest design. We wondered how we can understand the player relation to the story if the player path can look like this. Most of the quests in Dying Light 2 can be abandoned or engaged at any moment by the player. So how we can gather story-related context if the player is constantly doing and abandoning the main quest at will? The solution was surprisingly simple. We created a system we called narrative structure, and this system allowed us to recognize basically if the main quest is pursued at the moment or no. It would switch between two worlds, one we call defined, which is the world of the main quest, and one we will call default, which is the generic activity. And this switching will be done, as I said, with a very simple, surprisingly simple rule, based on the player distance to the objective marker. So if the distance between player and the objective marker is dropping, that means we should enter the defined mode because the player is doing the main quest. If the distance is rising, we will save the latest closest distance and enter default. Then if the distance starts dropping again, we will wait until the player reaches this last closest point, and then just then switch to defined. This is to prevent switching when the player is far away from the objective, and it also helped to remind the player that this is the spot where you abandoned the quest, and we, for example, can play the quest music and remind the player, oh, I need this quest, maybe I can continue and finish this quest while I'm here. We needed to create some cooldowns both ways to prevent frequent switching if the player is going back and forth like that. And to make it, to get some more control, we also use traditional zones for quests. This was used for quests that are actually closed, because there are some, and sometimes when there are areas that should have the quest music at all times, then we use the traditional music zone. And now the secret I said about in the wind system. So using the story system of DL2, we would set different states for narrative structure default and narrative structure defined. The default state group is on the left, would hold the information, what is the current quest and is it done or not, so it's basically a list of quests. And the narrative structure defined would be as many state groups as we had quests, and each state group will be a list of important quest events. So every time you finish an important dialogue, you pick up a quest item. When you reach important turning point in the quest, we will set next state in the narrative structure defined state group. This allowed us to achieve a couple of things. So in default, we could use the information about the story progress and change the mix or switch audio content. And we used it for the wind that I showed you earlier. When there are quests where the player is not supposed to explore, the wind would be more oppressive to discourage exploring. If there is a quest that gives you a sad feeling, then we'll try to support that with the wind layer. Second, in defined, we were able to completely switch the systemic content off. So if we are fighting an important story character, we are able to completely disable the generic combat system and play unique combat music for that is composed for this character only. And lastly, in defined, we could also use the information where we exactly are in the quest and change the mix to underline the events of the quest. So we could, for example, create an anticipation between a jump scare by disabling layers of ambient, or we can make player parkour sounds louder if it is a parkour tutorial or some scripted chase or something like this. So time for examples of the narrative structure system. Video will show how the system can make the same parkour path feel completely different. This will be the first example. And the second example will show what happens when player is exiting defined and abandoning the main quest.
Yeah.
Have mercy. Please, release me. Take it off.
Inhibitor container detected.
Okay, I think that's it. We did it. Thank you for listening. We have some time, so I can replay a video if you like, and time for questions. Yeah, thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
A question regarding side quests. What if any marker of the side quest is close to your default main quest? What happens then?
Yeah, we asked ourselves this question at some point, and it was a moment of brief panic. But then we realized you cannot have two quest markers active, so you have only one quest marker active. If the side quest marker is active, then no defined state and no quest music. We stayed in the side quest.
does that amount of sound effects for every part of the game, does that impact the optimization in any way?
What do you mean automation?
I mean, when you have so many different sounds for everything in the game, does that make it a bit more heavy on the
Performance.
yeah, on performance?
Yeah. So the performance issues were challenging. Thankfully, Wise middleware has a lot of advanced features for optimization. So we basically needed to spend some time on limiting the voices and put the priority on each voice. So in our Wise session, everything is prioritized, and we have a rigid voice limit to avoid some performance issues with the number of sounds that are trying to be played. So at the critical moments, like very intense moments, the least important stuff will get cut off and not play at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the interesting talk. Just a small technical question. The wise states that you were tracking for the narrative structure. Out of interest, how did you store and track those? Was that did Wise get the states set and then the game would take a snapshot of all the states, or was there something else in the game actually running all the different states, and you were taking info from that every time the game started?
I think the answer to this is story system. So the same way similar way you play a sound in dialogue. Maybe that's not a good example, but the story and saving system in DL2 will basically replay the whole story to a point to which you saved the game, thus triggering all the states that were there, because the states are nested in the story system, and magically it worked every time.
Cool, so you had a reliable actual game-centric system that was tracking that.
Yeah, it was the story system that everyone was using for quest design, playing dialogues. We used it to play some sounds and also to set those states. And it worked, as I said, when you load the game, everything that happened previously would be triggered by the system, right? So every state will get quickly triggered to the state you are currently in.
Cool. Thank you.
Great talk, thank you very much. So there are a lot of follies during the parkour. Did you record all of them?
Yes, I mean, this is a question for another person, not me, Wojtek sitting in the front row. But I think most of the foley sounds are recorded, right? Yes. Welcome, Wojtek.
Hello, guys. Great talk. Yeah, this was I prepared like really quick recording session for parkour. I have a nice place to do it near my home. I set up 2 microphones on my shoes, and 2 microphones, short Sennheisers on near my ears to simulate, like, you know, binaural things. And like I was like jumping and running everywhere, like security guys want to, you know, stop me. And, you know, they call police and so on. But in 2 hours session, I record like everything, and I can create almost all assets used in the game later on. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you for support, Wojtek. Thanks.